Always fed the poor man on the street, but she didn't know who the ma was. Her kindness always brought her back to this man, but she didn't know why. So sit down, relax as we learn. What she didn't next will shock you. Once upon a time on the streets of Kampala. On a small corner near the taxi park, a frail man sat cross-legged beside a cracked plastic bowl. His clothes were worn to threads, his sandals mismatched, and his eyes carried the heaviness of a life that had forgotten gentleness. Across the street, Zawadi Namusok, 21, stepped out of her mother's black Mercedes. She wore a simple yellow dress despite the expensive pearls on her wrist. Zawadi was a daughter of wealth. Her mother, Rebecca, had married one of Uganda's most successful businessmen, Mr. Douglas S. Seba, when Zawadi was only 7. They lived in a mansion of polished marble floors, manicured lawns, and gates taller than 2 men. But beneath the layers of privilege, Zawadi's heart remained soft, almost fragile. Clutched a paper bag filled with hot chapatis and fried tilapia from the nearby market, her driver protested. "Miss Zawadi, your mother will not like this. Let's go home." "I'll only take a minute, Sam," she said, her soft voice carrying a quiet authority. Zawadi crossed the street, dust brushing her white sneakers, and knelt beside the man. His eyes widened as if surprised that someone so clean, so obviously rich, would stoop to his level. "Here," she said gently, opening the bag, "I brought food for you." The man's fingers trembled as he accepted the parcel. He looked older than his likely years, skin darkened by the unforgiving sun, hair streaked with grey. When he smiled faintly, Zawadi noticed the dimples on his cheeks. "God bless you, my daughter," he whispered, voice cracked like dry earth. Zawadi smiled back, her heart squeezing with a feeling she could not name. There was something strangely familiar about his eyes, a deep brown warmth that pulled at her memories, but she quickly brushed it aside. "I'll come again tomorrow," she said. As she stood to leave, the man's gaze followed her like a prayer. His heart beat with a painful longing. "My little Zawadi, if only you knew." That night at the Grand Essebua estate, Rebecca scolded her daughter. "You must stop roaming the streets. Kampala is dangerous." "I wasn't roaming, Mama. I was helping someone," Zawadi replied quietly. Douglas, her stepfather, barely looked up from his tablet. "Let the girl be. Charity builds character." Rebecca shot him a sharp glance but said nothing more. Still, when Zawadi looked into her mother's eyes, she caught a flicker of unease, almost fear. Later, as Zawadi lay in her room, she thought of the man on the street, the way his eyes softened when he saw her, the tremor in his voice when he said, "My daughter." Did those words sound more than a blessing? Why did they feel personal? The next day, Zawadi returned, carrying a flask of hot tea. The man was waiting as if he had known she would come. "Good afternoon, uncle," she greeted, using the respectful term for an elder stranger. "My angel," he replied, his cracked lips forming a smile. "You came back." They ate in silence for a while, then he asked softly, "Do you know who your father is?" Zawadi froze. "My father, he died when I was little," she said carefully. "That's what Mama told me." The man's eyes darkened. He swallowed hard. "Sometimes the dead are only dead in stories." Frowned. "What do you mean?" The man looked away, pain etching deeper lines across his face. "Nothing, just an old man's thoughts." But something in his tone unsettled her. That night she dreamed of a man she couldn't remember, a tall figure lifting her high in the air, laughing. When she woke, tears stained her pillow. Days passed. Zawadi visited the man, whose name she learned was Moses, every afternoon. She brought food, clean water, and sometimes medicine. Each time he asked subtle questions about her childhood. Did she remember her father's voice? Did her mother ever show her old photographs? One evening, Zawadi decided to confront her mother. "Mama, tell me about my real father," she demanded. Rebecca stiffened, her wine glass trembling slightly. Why this sudden curiosity? I need to know who he was." Rebecca's eyes glistened. "He was a good man, Zawadi, but he made mistakes. We left to protect you." "Protect me from what?" Rebecca's lips tightened. "Please, my child, let the past rest." But Zawadi could not rest. Something deep inside her whispered that the truth was closer than her mother dared to admit. One rainy afternoon, Zawadi entered her mother's study while Rebecca was out shopping. Inside a locked drawer, she found a bundle of old letters tied with a faded blue ribbon. They were from a man named Moses Kagwa. The handwriting was gentle but desperate. "Rebecca, I will never stop looking for you and our daughter. tell Zawadi I love her. Please, don't keep her from me. Zawadi's hands shook as she read. Moses, the man on the street. Heart thundered, but Mama said he was dead. The next day, Zawadi rushed to the corner where Moses always sat. Rain drizzled on the dusty street. He looked up, eyes brightening despite the cold. Zawadi, he said, his voice breaking. Is it true? She blurted, tears welling. Are you my father? Moses's lips quivered. He tried to speak, but only a choked sob came out. Slowly, he nodded. Yes, my little star, I am your father. Zawadi covered her mouth, the world spinning. But Mama said, she said you were gone. Moses's shoulders sagged under the weight of years. When you were 5, I lost my job. I struggled to provide. I made mistakes. Your mother feared poverty would destroy us. She left with you and married the rich man. By the time I found where you lived, the gates were too high for a poor man to climb. He reached for her hand but stopped midway, afraid. I watched you grow from a distance. Your birthdays, your school concerts. I was always there, hiding in the crowd. Zawadi burst into tears. She threw herself into his arms, uncaring of the wet rags and the curious eyes of passers-by. My father, she sobbed, all this time you were right here. That evening, Zawadi confronted her mother. Rebecca listened in silence, tears streaking her carefully powdered face. I wanted you to have a better life, Rebecca whispered. Moses lost everything. I thought marrying Douglas would secure your future. Mamas, you lied to me, Zawadi cried. You kept my father away. Rebecca knelt before her daughter. I was wrong. I was scared, but I never stopped loving him. Douglas entered quietly, having overheard the conversation. Rebecca, he said gently, perhaps it's time to make things right. The next morning, Douglas drove Zawadi and Rebecca to the street corner. Moses stood waiting, clutching a small bouquet of wildflowers, as if he had rehearsed this moment for years. When Rebecca stepped out, their eyes met, two souls bound by pain and unfinished love. Moses, she whispered. He bowed slightly. Rebecca, you look well. For a moment, silence wrapped them. Then Zawadi took her parents' hands and joined them together. We've lost too much time, she said, voice trembling. Let's not lose any more. Rebecca's tears fell freely. Moses's eyes shone with hope. Douglas, standing behind, placed a supportive hand on Zawadi's shoulder. Family, Douglas said softly, is not built by blood alone, but today, let's honor the blood that still binds you. Weeks turned into months. Douglas offered Moses a job in one of his companies, starting with dignity and a steady income. Clean clothes replaced tattered rags, and a small apartment replaced the cold street. Zawadi visited her father every day, eager to make up for lost years. They cooked together, shared stories, and laughed until their cheeks ached. Sometimes she would catch him watching her with quiet awe, as if memorizing every detail of her face. One evening, as the sunset spilled gold across the city, Moses held his daughter's hand and whispered, You brought me back to life, Zawadi, my little gift from God. Zawadi smiled through tears, and you taught me what true love is. At Zawadi's 22nd birthday, the family gathered, Douglas, Rebecca, Moses, and close friends. Laughter filled the air like music. When Moses raised a toast, his voice wavered. Life took us down painful roads, he said, eyes glistening, but love brought us home. Zawadi looked around the room, her two fathers, her mother, a circle once broken now whole. Heart swelled with a peace she had never known. Sometimes the richest treasures are hidden in the poorest places. And sometimes the man the world calls a beggar is the very one who gave you life.